Hi there and welcome to Central Texas Gardener. I'm Tom Spencer. Yes, it's been a tough year, but native wildflowers and perennials are dauntless in their determination. Today, Sean Watson from the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center connects us to tough survivors and how we can plant them this fall. On tour, let's visit a drought-tough native garden that attracts wildlife all year long.
Bobby Sukahara and Gil Starkey wanted to attract the three Bs, butterflies, birds, and bees, when they renovated their garden. Since their property backs up to water quality protection land adjoining the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center, it was especially important to them to contribute to nature's gifts rather than deplete them. But when they moved from Boston to build their home in 2000, they were newcomers to native Texas philosophy.
Discovering native gardening was really the key for us. I had no idea how rich the flora of Texas is, and the fact if you plant wisely, you can have something blooming for most of the year. Something is in blossom for a large portion of the year. That was amazing to me.
Their daughter-in-law, Pam Pennock, now a landscape designer, helped them make the transition. As a transplant herself, she learned the new rules for Texas gardening.
She started educating us around native plants, and so that was an enormous help because we had lived in New England for 15 years. So to come to Texas and garden is a major transition. In New England, you just put something out and it grows. And here, we had to learn about what would handle the extreme heat, drought, and so on.
We did try to do buffalo grass initially, and it just did not do well, I think because of so many weeds blowing in. So we decided we wanted to turn this whole backyard into a garden. And we, from the beginning, wanted to do three things with that garden. Of course, one, make something that we would enjoy, but we also strongly wanted to draw birds, butterflies, and bees into the yard to have a very natural setting. So that's really what drove us in the whole approach to this, was trying to appeal to those three constituencies.
In 2008, Bobby and Gil began working with Troy Nixon and Judy Walther of Environmental Survey Consulting to address drainage issues, structural design, and plants for the three Bs. Even in the small backyard, Troy and Judy provided travel, destinations, and slowdown moments. Non-natives mingle with natives, but all are on a short water leash.
We are, both of us, very, very sensitive to water. We had actually taken a trip to Israel a few years before we moved down here, and were so struck by their commitment to making the desert bloom, which is their sort of their country's thing, is they'll talk about making the desert bloom, but with conserving water. And so I had this heightened awareness of water when we moved to Austin, having taken that trip. And then we were struck by the topography of Austin and how similar it is to parts of Israel. And then, of course, we located on top of the Edwards Aquifer recharge zone. So that all of those things together heightened our awareness and our commitment to conservation of water.
And our location helps. Having native gardening to attract the birds that are right over here in this Prop 2 preserve land. We get, every year, we have painted buntings in our backyard. It's just amazing. The lesser goldfinches, I've seen rufous-sided towhees back here, roadrunners, a quail covey, turkey hen just on the other side of the fence. I mean, you name the bird, cedar waxwings passing through, or just almost any kind of bird. Cardinals, of course, mockingbirds all over the place. Just tons of birds back here. And it's when we're inside and have the view from our living room, which is basically a wall of glass facing this garden, there's constant bird action out here.
And butterfly action as well. There's always butterfly action.
Every year, of course, we have a lot of mockingbirds around here, and somebody's nesting either in the yard or very close to it. And one of the big kicks I get is when the fledgling, when the new brood is big enough to fly, and they all come into this backyard, and there will be 6, 7 of them in one family. And they love to get on these chairs and chase each other around from chair to chair. It's just hilarious to watch.
Yes, like musical chairs on the patio.
Certainly, they don't use any pesticides to fend off friends, but Troy and Judy did help them keep out the wildlife they don't want up close.
The other thing was the rattlesnake barrier. We have this collapsed cave off the property right over here, and so we were getting a lot of rattlesnakes in the yard. And with young grandchildren, that was a problem. Also with dogs, that was a problem. So they helped us to tighten up. We had a rattlesnake barrier that we had already done with the advice of a herpetologist, but then they helped to tighten it up. So I don't think we've had a rattlesnake at all since they did their work.
Like any garden, of course it means some tending, especially when perennials need seasonal pruning. But rather than a constant drain of time, the resourceful plants give back.
I see it as a form of therapy. We both, of course, are busy in our work, and except in the heavy spring, fall, late winter cleanup stuff. Other than that, it's just, it's very, very therapeutic, very peaceful to come out and do some deadheading, just walk our little paths here. It gives back much more than we have to put into it.
It's like a mini vacation. It's so quiet here. It's so peaceful. And we've had guests just sit on the deck and watch the birds and the butterflies. And so that was really a goal overall for this whole property. And fortunately, I think we've been able to achieve some of that.
Thanks for sharing your garden with us. And now we're going to be talking about fall planting and wildflower seeds. Lots of things to do this time of year. And joining me to talk about all these things is Sean Watson, who's the nursery manager at the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me on.
We're going to start off by talking about a big event at the Wildflower Center, which is the fall plant sale. This is something that is eagerly anticipated by a lot of plant collectors here in the Central Texas area. And a lot of folks may be wondering, should they plant at all this fall?
Yeah, and that's a good question. Without the rain, there's definitely a lot of doubts. Mm-hmm. But it is Central Texas, and fall is the best time to plant. Right.
And we're going to be talking about varieties that are meant for the kind of drought conditions that we're experiencing.
Right. Some of the tougher natives. Mm-hmm. That's what we're going to talk about.
Right. And the plant sale is going to be happening when this year?
It is October 14th, 15th, and 16th this year, with the member sale on the 14th. Right.
And this is, again, for those hard-to-find native plants that often you can't find in the nurseries, maybe the only chance to get a lot of this plant material.
Oh, yeah. We grow a lot of the hard-to-find, harder-to-grow things. And we usually have over 300 species.
So a great opportunity. Now, in thinking about strategies for planting this fall, we will be, as I said, focusing on the super survivors, the toughest of the drought-tolerant plants. But are there special things that you're going to be doing this year at the Wildflower Center to prepare for planting, or just to keep things alive once you've planted? They say this drought's going to continue into next year.
Yeah, I mean, if we do any transplanting we do in the fall, if there is no rain, we'll have to water more. Everything is pretty much mulched, most transplants. And so a good layer of mulch and just keeping up on watering on all the new transplants is the main thing.
Okay, well, that's pretty basic, mulch and water.
Right.
That's pretty good advice, really,
amending
too.
the soil is a big thing, too. So if you have hard pan clay, it's good to break it up with compost or sand to increase drainage too,
Well,
increase odds.
Always start with the basics and start with the soil.
Right.
Well, let's talk about some of the plants that are going to be available. And there are a variety of native trees that you've referenced as we were sitting down getting to know one another that I always love talking about these plants because I think they're really underused. One of them is the Parkinsonia or Jerusalem thorn.
Right.
This is a terrific plant for this region, and boy, it's drought tolerant.
Yeah, it's very drought tolerant. Actually, the plant itself is green. The trunk is because it can basically photosynthesize through the trunk, and and it has small leaves, and so it's very drought tolerant in that way. And so in extreme drought, they'll drop all of their leaves and just photosynthesize through the trunk.
Yeah, and actually it's a very appealing look, even leafless.
Yeah, even without rain, those things bloomed a lot this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Jerusalem thorn, also called palo verde, right?
Palo verde, ratama is another name.
Right.
And there's even another species from South Texas that is nice. It's actually a little smaller, a little larger leaves, but still has a nice
bright
look
yellow
to it.
flowers.
Yeah, it's more like an ornamental tree.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. A great size tree too. And then there are a lot of acacias as well that are going to be available, right?
Yes, we'll have Weisach, which is the Acacia farnesiana. And that is a good early spring bloomer, but it's also very drought tolerant, grows fast.
Fragrant plant too.
Very fragrant, yeah. Great for honeybees.
Right, and one of my favorite memories of the hill country is driving through a big area in springtime when the acacia's all blooming, and just that perfume just everywhere in the air is really beautiful.
Yeah, it's nice light shade tree too.
Yeah. And again, super drought tolerant, made for the sun, made for the hill country, made for those thin soils.
Exactly. Yeah, it grows in a pretty wide area, South Texas up into Central Texas.
And one of my all-time favorite trees for this region, and one that is, again, I look around town this year, I see a lot of things suffering, but the orchid trees seem to be loving it. The bauhinias.
Yeah, the bauhinias, that's another one of those legume trees that's very drought tolerant. Grows in the Del Rio area. Which gets a lot less rain than here. So
yeah, just particular to one little patch of hills down there.
It's in one spot here in the States, and that's down in the Devil's River area.
Yeah, just a really remarkable plant though, and they perform incredibly well in Austin. Beautiful show of blooms in the springtime. Again, great fragrance.
And sometimes in the fall too, they'll do another show, depending on the weather.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Maybe not this year.
Yeah, maybe without the rain, but maybe not.
Well, a great cross-section of different trees there. And then, of course, when I think of the Wildflower Center in the fall, I always think of wildflower seeding, because the fall is the time to put out some of our favorites.
Right, like bluebonnets, all of your gaillardias, which is the Indian blanket, and there's even the pincushion daisy, which is another one I like to grow. Very fragrant gaillardia. Your rudbeckias, like your brown-eyed Susans, and your giant coneflowers.
Right.
Of course, bluebonnets. Everybody loves bluebonnets. And
Phlox
September,
too, right?
Yeah, and the Phlox drumundii, which is a very drought-tolerant annual. And we've already, we have some starts, so it'll probably be ready for the fall sale.
Okay.
So you can sometimes start those a little early if you have good greenhouse conditions.
Okay. Okay.
Even in the heat.
Well, let's talk about soil prep and, again, strategies. And if we're used to thinking, oh, you throw the seeds out in the fall, it rains,
right?
And then you have a show of flowers in the spring. We can't count on that happening, it seems like, this year.
Right. Hopefully it does happen.
Yeah,
but
cross our fingers.
If not, a good thing to do is, one, you need to clear out the area of all weeds where you're going to be planting. Another good idea is, especially if it's a really dry year, is to add compost or something else into the soil that can hold a little more moisture.
Yeah. When you say add that, and a lot of people are thinking, when they think of wildflower plantings, they think of larger spaces often. Do you turn that compost in?
It's ideal to actually turn that compost in.
Right.
So if you have a large area and you're able to, afford the amount of compost it would take to top dress that area and then till it in, at least at the first couple of inches,
right,
would be ideal. Deeper would be better, of course, maybe a foot down.
Right.
Just so that soil holds more moisture and it's more organic matter. And
right.
All native plants, any native plants I've grown in compost, love it. I've heard otherwise, but you know, just like any other plants, they like water and they like good nutrients. So.
Those are a couple of the basics, right?
Right.
So at the very least, scratch that compost in as best you can if you're out there in the hard pan, right?
Yeah, at the very least. Yeah. And even if you do just do a top dressing of compost, that can help in terms of seed germination, because maybe it's a little cleaner and it's maybe weed free,
right?
Versus your native soil.
What about watering those patches during the winter time and the fall?
Well, if we don't get any rain, then those areas need to be kept moist. And even if we do get rain in between periods, they may have to be watered just to keep those the seedlings moist. Because, you know, they start off really small. The root systems are not very large. They don't go very deep. And so it's just good to keep them moist until they're pretty well established.
You know, one group of plants that you said you've been growing more successfully recently are the cacti.
Yes.
Is fall an appropriate time for planting those out? I often think with protecting them during the, keeping them from the cold.
Right. That is one of the issues. I've really haven't had a big issue planting cactus in the fall if they are cold hardy. If it's something that is maybe a little less cold hardy, it's better to wait until spring so they can establish their root system.
Exactly.
And then if they freeze back, then they can resprout.
Right.
So usually springtime is kind of the better time to plant cactus. But if it's a cold hardy cactus, I'd say go for it.
Okay, real briefly, any favorite varieties you really like to recommend there?
Yes, lace cactus, which is native to this area. It's kind of Cereus reichenbachii. We'll have that to sell. Nice, white, lacy look to it. Nice, big, purple, magenta flowers.
Love cactus blooms.
Yeah. Mammillarias, I like those a lot. There's a mammillaria haderi, which is a very spherical, low-growing, just kind of makes a little mound on the ground.
Okay.
There's different species of those that I like as well.
Well, and again, all the plants we're talking about are going to be available at the sale?
So far. Yep.
Okay, so we've hit the good ones. And the sale, again, is happening it starts on the 14th, and that's for members only.
That's for members only from 1 until 7.
Okay, and then Saturday and Sunday, the 15th and 16th as well.
9 to 5. We'll be there.
All right, and people should bring the little red wagons, right?
They should bring, if they want a lot of plants, they better bring 2.
All right, well, thanks, Sean, for being with us.
Yeah, anytime.
Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Daphne.
Welcome to Down to Earth. I'm Daphne Richards. Our question this week is, how do seeds work? Well, first, seeds are tiny packets of carbohydrates plus a tiny future plant. The first thing that all seeds need is pretty obvious. They need water to germinate. And when water and oxygen are taken up, the plant embryo can begin respiration and can digest the carbohydrate food packaged with it in the seed. And then it can begin to grow. Some seeds are large, such as pumpkin seeds, and should be planted deeply so that they have plenty of space to expand before they emerge from the soil, while other seeds are so tiny that they require light to germinate. If these seeds don't sense light, they won't germinate because they have virtually no stored carbohydrates, hence their tiny size. And so they must have the sun to begin immediate photosynthesis in order to grow. Some seeds need warm temperatures to germinate, and we think of those as our warm season plants. Tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, marigolds, and others, while some seeds need cooler temperatures, lettuce, spinach, and onion. These temperature-sensitive seeds use temperatures to gauge the time of year so that they can be sure that it's the right time to grow. Our plant this week is golden groundsel, Packera obovata. This Central Texas plant is a great flowering ground cover for shady areas of your landscape, but it also does quite well in morning sun. It's a perennial that spreads by running above ground stems that form plantlets on their ends when they touch the soil. Lawn grasses grow in the same manner, so you know that this plant should fill an area in nicely and quickly. Another great thing about golden groundsel is that with a little water through the winter, it's usually evergreen, so it gives some color to our otherwise brown winter yards. And then in very early spring, this plant bursts into growth and becomes covered in cute little yellow daisy-like flowers. Being evergreen and flowering so early, this plant is a great source of pollen for our struggling bee population before other flowers begin to emerge. This plant has survived some of the coldest and hottest and driest and wettest Central Texas seasons on record, So if you have some bare spots now, and who doesn't, give it a try. Our pet this week comes from Eve. This is Taffeta, a young Tennessee fainting goat. She and her sisters contribute nanny berries to Eve's organic garden. The manure is a natural, slow-release source of nutrients for the soil. Eve writes, I get love and affection from my goats as well as good food from my garden. Who could ask for more? And why they are called fainting goats. When startled, their legs freeze for 10 seconds. Young goats fall over and look dead, and mature goats figure it out by spreading their legs or leaning against something when they feel faint. Thanks, Eve and Taffeta. To do in your garden this week, if you have a lawn that you'd like to reinvigorate after our hottest Central Texas summer on record, start to water it now and give it a light dose of fertilizer this week. A little care now and through the winter will go a long way next summer toward helping your lawn through the harsh summer times. We'd love to hear from you. Please visit klru.org/CTG to send us your questions, plants, and pets of the week.
Thanks, Daphne. Now let's check in with John Dromgold for Backyard Basics.
Hello, gardening friends. Welcome to Backyard Basics. Some of us gardeners are getting a little bit older and have trouble once we're down on our knees getting back up, and the tools are starting to get heavier than they used to be. But we can still all garden out there. It can still be a lot of fun, and we can make the changes that are appropriate for a gardener that has arthritis or doesn't bend over so easily. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? And so here's some of the tools that I picked up at a nursery that I think lend themselves to gardeners with some sort of difficulty or just age. And so here's a nice little fixed tine shrub rake. It's a nice one. It gets in and out very easily. It's not that great big old one. And so, and it works fine. I like them. I use them all the time. When getting into those tight places, I would go ahead and use one of these. You know, when it comes to weeding, which we're all going to have to weed anyway, here's one. This is called the stirrup hoe. The stirrup hoe, the hula hoe, there's several names for it, is one of my favorite weeders. You know, what we want to do is get out there and be effective. We don't want to be hacking at the ground with a hoe. So you use something like this, a stirrup hoe. It's very good. It is really a good little hoe. So I suggest that when it comes to weeding, change from that big old heavy hoe to one of these types. Shovels also, you know how big the pans are on those shovels, and that just makes it heavier to deal with. Well, there's some with a small pan like this one, and these are easy to use. It's not as if you were going to dig a trench somewhere. You're just going to dig some holes to either put in some edging or plant some more perennials in your yard. So that's a great little shovel right there. It does a wonderful job, and once again, it's easy to get in and out of those places. Ergonomics, the ability to use a standard tool in a much easier way, is part of this design right here. You can see it in the handle. I love this handle. You can grab it anywhere. It gives you a lot of strength and force and makes it a lot easier to dig with. And here is the garden fork type. And there are many other styles of this one. And what I like also is the stainless steel pan on this. It's so easy to clean stainless steel, as opposed to regular steel where the mud sticks to it. You just wash this off, or you take a little stick. There's something called an English man, and the man is just a piece of wood that cleans them off. So stainless steel is, I think, a big aid in cleaning up your equipment, which you need to do when you're finished. Here's another ergonomic tool right here. You can see the design, and it comes with this little claw, this cultivator, or with a little hoe. It's a real neat one. Or for digging, it's just a great tool, and your hand is at the right angle as opposed to up like this. So this is a great little tool. And for hauling your stuff out into the garden, this device right here is wonderful. It's a new design. It's like a little chair. You can either carry your potting soil out there, your fertilizer, some of your tools, and it's real easy to pull along. And some people like to take the cat out in the garden in one of these things. So they're really nice. This over here is a kneeler. This kneeler is, I use the darn kneeler. Well, you know, when you get down there and you've been working for quite some time, and then you're trying to get up, well, you grab the little handles and you push yourself on up, and you're on your way once again. So the kneeler is really a neat one. You can also turn it over and sit on it. If you're working a little bit higher, this thing flips over. You can sit comfortably on it and really work for a very long time. So here's a few tools for those of us who might be getting a little bit older. We're looking for something lighter to work with, still as effective as any tool that we had, and going to last a lifetime. For Backyard Basics, I'm John Dromgoole. I'll see you next week.
Visit klru.org/CTG for more tips and to watch online. Next week, meet some plants that screen a view. Until then, I'll see you in the garden.
To learn about today's program, watch online, and follow CTG's blog, check out klru.org/CTG.